I swore I wasn't going to start another comic book run after I finished The Invaders. Well, with this week's comic book haul, not only did I start another run, but I also started a second. So stay tuned as I do the reveal and to show what two series that I'm going to be working on next. Welcome back, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and in today's episode, we've got a comic book haul for you. These are more comics that I have won off of Infinity Comics auctions on hipcomic.com. And what makes this special today is that I swore I wasn't going to start on another run of comics after I finished The Invaders. Well, I've only got a few issues left of The Invaders run. It's almost complete, but that something's ignited in me, and I've kind of gotten that fever to work on other runs as well, and I've already started on it a little bit in some of the previous comic book hauls that I've picked up from different auction places, different stores, and the two runs that I'm talking about is All-Star Comics from DC Comics and The Defenders from Marvel, of course. And I've started on them already, but in this episode right here, this week's auction wins, I really went in on the Defenders, and I started picking up some high grade of All-Star Comics as well. I guess that's what we're going to be doing. And this is for fun, guys. This is for fun. The values aren't really there unless you can get those 9.8 candidates, but honestly, I wasn't too worried about that because I'm not picking up these for very much money. And I'm still picking up pretty high-grade books. We're talking VF minus to VF plus in most cases. And even the books that come from Infinity Comics that are listed as a fine / very fine or just fine plus are usually much better than what they say they are. That's my experience with Infinity Comics. The books that you get from their auction wins can usually be improved with a little bit of work, but generally that they're graded very conservatively, and I think they're better than what the grades are that they say in most cases. And again, we'll go through each book and we'll talk about the prices a little bit and what the grades are, but honestly, in most cases, unless you can get a 9.8 candidate, they're not going to be worth getting them graded. But that's not what I'm worried about here. What I'm working on is a run of comics just to have in my PC. And again, it's just for fun. But give me a moment to get the books ready, and we'll do a little show and tell. But before we do that, definitely hit that like button, slap the subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any of my episodes that I put out each and every week, Mondays and Fridays at 10 a.m. All right, guys, buckle up. Let's get ready for the books.
5 minutes later.
All right, guys, let's start with All-Star Comics, and I'll show you what I picked up. First one is issue number 66. And this right here is from June of 1977. In this, the only kind of key in this book right here was apparently James Gordon died in this, but I guess it didn't really happen. I'm not really sure. I haven't read this. I had a few of these when I was a kid, but I didn't have the whole run. So I only had a small glimpse of what the All-Star Comics was back when I was a kid. Now, since then, I've started collecting these. I actually do have issue number 58. I think I've got a couple in the PC. Both of those are in the shop to be cleaned and pressed. Of course, that is the first appearance of Power Girl. And the rest of this is a fairly easy run. There's not significant keys, I don't believe, in the rest of the run. But I am looking for high grade on this, not necessarily to get graded. And just like what I'm going to talk about with the Defenders, unless you can get those 9.8 candidates, these are books that don't get graded. Do not bother to get these graded. In some cases, a 9.6 may go over that 3-digit mark, but for the most case, even a 9.6 will be under $100, even under $75 in a lot of cases. So I'm not going to get into the prices on each one of these necessarily, even though I do have the research in front of me right there. But we got issue number 66. And we have issue number 68. Now, this is one that I did have as a kid, and I always was a fan of the Psycho Pirate. And I think a lot of that had to do with his being used in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. in such a significant way. And I always liked that character. It was such a kind of a fascinating character and a foil for the Justice Society. But I always liked that character, and this was a nice appearance right here. I had that one as a kid, like I said. I also picked up number 70 here. And again, not an expensive book. I'm only paying a few dollars for these books off of an Infinity Comics auction win here. But a lot of times you go to a store, you may, depending on the grade, anywhere from probably $5 to $15 if the grade is really good. I would imagine that's what you're going to find that at. I didn't pay anywhere close to some of these prices on this. But this right here is actually a little bit of a key. It is the first full appearance of the Huntress, and this came from February 1978. So those were the all-star comics that I picked up, and easy run. It's a lot less than even the Invaders run. So I think I'm going to continue working on that. Just for fun, guys. Just for fun. But the Defenders, on the other hand, is a much bigger run. It's got some keys in it, and it's got some early comics that are going to get a little expensive if you even include books from Marvel Feature as well, where their first appearance is, or even the pre-first appearances in the Submariner books back in the day. We'll see about that. Right now, we're just going to concentrate on the regular Invaders run and see how it goes. And part of this stems out of the first comic books I had as a kid in 1973. At that point, I am 5 or 6 years old at that point. The books I'd been getting before that from my grandparents and my parents were the funny books, Casper, Richie Rich, Archie, things like that. But in 73, it seems like that's the year that I started getting Marvel books, DC books off the stands when I would go visit the drugstore, the pharmacy, on Saturday mornings with my mom. And Mom and my grandmother would go to town every Saturday. And I lived in the country, so we didn't make trips every day like it seems like we do in the urban areas, right? We at a whim, we just go to the store whenever we want. But back then, we would go down to the store once a week, make a grocery store run once a week, and go to the drugstore as well. And that's where the comic books were. And 73 was when I started getting a lot of these books that I remember and cherish from my childhood. And the Defenders with Steve Englehart and Sal Buscema were one of those. I believe issue number 6 or 7, maybe both of those were some of those early issues. So I'm going to go and start filling in some of those blanks. I'll probably get better copies of those, but I will start getting some of the ones I didn't have. Starting with this one here, issue number 5. And you would think here at early issue number 5 right here would be, and it's in really good shape, guys. It is really good shape. It is in a, what is it? It is a fine grade, but it looks much better than that. But even a fine, you would think, would actually have some value, but it doesn't. If you could get this up to a 9.6, maybe. $237 was a recent sale, but after that, 9.4 drops all the way to a 119, 9.2, 70, and it just keeps dropping from there. So that's why I'm not worried about the CGC aspect of this and worrying about investment on these books, other than the fact that they're still going to be high grade enough that at some point they can be sold at a decent price, but not at a premium, of course. But I'm just having fun collecting these. This right here was also the origin of the Valkyrie. So I've never read that, so I may actually have to break it out when I'm checking the book, guys. I'm going to read that book too. But also, again, still Sal Buscema and Steve Englehart work right there. I think it was the issue right after that was my first issue of Defenders. All right, this is actually a little bit of a key, and I always wanted it, but I never could find it at a decent price. It just wasn't high on the list, to be honest. But this week's Infinity Auctions had a ton of Defenders books. And I went in on this a little heavier than I expected by the time I was done. And this is one I probably should have passed on just because the condition, even though it says it's a VF minus, there's some foxing and some staining up here in the white that I don't like. It is Defenders number 9. This is parts 4 through 6 of the Defenders versus Avengers war that was going on between the two groups in the two books. And I remember this mostly from the Avengers side, seeing some of those issues with the Defenders. You had the Silver Surfer battling the Vision. I remember that very distinctly. But this was always a great cover right there. You've got Iron Man taking on Hawkeye again. I mean, of course, that's when Hawkeye's first appearance was in Tales of Suspense taking on Iron Man. But this time, Hawkeye has got the backup of the Defenders, so I think Iron Man might have some trouble here. I'll enjoy reading this one as well. This one actually, if it was really a VF minus, maybe with a little bit of work could get it up into that 9.4 range, maybe with a little bit of work. That right there recently went for $150. 9.6 I don't think is possible, but that would be worth about $250. After that, 9.2, 125. Like I said, this does have a little bit of value to it, but then an 8.5 drops under $100 down to 85, and it just keeps dropping after that. So again, not right now a candidate, at least this particular copy, to get graded. I also picked up issue number 13. This is from May of 1974. And by this point, I didn't have a lot of the Invaders runs. It seems like 73 was a big year, but then I guess as the older I got, there was more interest. I wasn't going to town as much with mom and dad, or mom and my grandmother. And so I didn't get comics each and every week that I went to town. So I had some Invaders along the way, but this was not one of them. If it was, I would have jumped all over it seeing the Squadron Sinister here. Not the Squadron Supreme yet, even. It's still the Squadron Sinister. And that's a great cover. I thought it came out as a VF when on the auction. I thought, hey, let's get that. In fact, every one of these that were on the auction were, most of them were in that VF range. And I bid on most of these. And if it went too high, I just let it go. But in most cases, I wasn't paying more than probably anywhere from $5 to $8 a piece on some of these. This right here, I'm going to enjoy reading as well. Again, like real fan of the Squadron Sinister. It's also the first appearance of Nebulon. And this is a book that does have value if you could get it up to the 9.4 at $175. I don't know. This one actually has a chance at being a VF that I might be able to get up there. We'll see what it is. Once I get these books out of the bag and put them into fresh bags and get the chance to really look at them, we'll see if any of them have any real potential to go to CGC. At the moment, right now, I'm not considering any of these to be like that. Again, just to have them in my PC is enough at this point. I did pick up issue number 21, and this is the first appearance of the Headman. By this point, I wasn't reading Defenders at all. This is from March of 1975, and I didn't have many after this. I mean, at this point, even a little bit older now, and more things are going on in my life at that time, and comics was not a big factor in that. It was still there, but it wasn't ongoing as much as it would have been in 73, maybe even 74. But this right here, no value at all unless you can get that 9.8. I didn't even pull the value on that because these books right here are not going to hit 9.8s. Let's put these down for a sec. Picked up issue number 29. Again, another VF minus copy. Second appearance of Starhawk. That is the key to this issue. Of course, the first appearance in issue number 28. That is a book that I have spotlighted on this channel in previous comic book haul videos and from Infinity Comics auctions that I've picked up several times. That is a decent key in the Defenders run. This right here is not much of one. Again, you've got to get a 9.8 to have any real value. Picked up issue number 30. And just a general book. There's no key significance to this. Again, another candidate for not going to CGC. A VF minus copy. Just a run filler at this point. As is issue number 31. And this one, we're already into 1976 at this point. January 1976. Another VF minus. Picked up issue number 32. And this is actually the origin of Nighthawk in this one. So I'm going to this was one I want to definitely break out. I knew Nighthawk was in the Defenders for years, but I honestly, even after all this time, I don't know that much about Nighthawk. So I'm going to read this book and see if I can pick up a little bit more on his origin. Now, 9.6 on this, at the very least, you could get $125 maybe. After 9.4 drops down, I mean, I saw the last sale I saw on the 9.4 on this book was $35. Guys, don't get these books graded unless you're absolutely sure you're going to hit that 9.8, in some cases 9.6s, and do pre-screens. You shouldn't afford to put these books in unless you can get those. And the last regular Defenders book I picked up was issue number 33 right here, and March of 1976. Again, even a 9.8 on this book right here fell in the last sale under $100. So don't get this graded, guys. Please don't get this graded. But it isn't the last Defenders book that I did pick up. There was one more, but it is Giant Size Defenders, number 4. And seeing the grade from Infinity Comics said it was a fine / very fine. It is a square bound book, but it had the Squadron Sinister again. It's funny, it's almost a very similar cover to issue number 13. So I kind of got this because I wanted to read the story more than anything. So that's the books that I picked up for the Defenders and All-Star Comics. It looks like I'm going to start a run on these, but we'll see how it goes. I may be one of those things where we'll work on it casually. I'm not going to go be super hyped about when I go to comic book shows about either one of these as I was with the Invaders. The Invaders is a book I really love, and I don't have the same feeling about the Defenders, and it is a much bigger run, and there's not a lot of keys in there as well. So we'll see how my enthusiasm goes moving forward on this one. All-Star Comics is a much smaller run, and that one will be an easier run to work on. Just have to wait for those high-grade copies to pop up at shows. If people even bring them to comic shows, I don't even know. I know that it's been tough finding Invaders books at some of the shows. High-grade Invaders books, I should say. So we'll see how we do on the Defenders and the All-Star Comics as we move forward. All right, so that leaves us still with a couple more books that I won during this week's auction wins from Infinity Comics. And I haven't declared that I'm making a run, but it really isn't a run of this particular book, but it is kind of falls in line with the Invaders. And that is Marvel Premiere number 29, the first appearance of the Liberty Legion. Of course, you've got Bucky there and a member of the Invaders. And this is right there with the Invaders. It pairs up with them very nicely. In fact, the Liberty Legion makes an appearance in the Invaders. So this was a nice book. This right here was, I'm trying to think, what was it? It was, I've got it written down in front of me. I'm just trying to find my notes. It's a fine, very fine book, but the photos look really good. And quick inspection on this, I think it's much better than a fine. It may fall into that very fine, maybe even very fine minus range. No value in this book whatsoever. 9.6 is literally just the last year, when it sells at all, just went for $77. I mean, 9.4 went for $40. Again, this is for fun more than anything. And then the last book that I picked up from Infinity Comics and during this auction is actually a key, and this is probably the most valuable book that I picked up during this whole time. In fact, it was the first book that I won, and then I kind of got onto the Defenders, buying the Defenders. We can discuss if I should have even went down this road and just stayed with getting good keys rather than working on a run like this. The money that I put in for those Defenders books could have gone for a decent key. That's kind of what I'm saying. But I picked this up. It is listed as a fine VF, and I think it's going to come out in pretty decent, even though it's a square bound. It's a really nice book, really nice copy of Giant-Sized Creatures number 1, the first appearance of Tigra. Here, let me move that a little bit there. There you go. And book as I had as a kid, and of course, when I say I read covers off of these, sometimes the covers stayed on there, but I mean, I read the crap out of these books. Love this book. Of course, you've got Tigra, who originally was the cat, and that is more of her first appearance, but this is her first appearance as Tigra, and loved this book as a kid. This has some really good value, even if you get it down to an 8.5. I recently saw a sale for $129. 9.0 is $185, and a 9.2 even up to $300. Now, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I haven't done a lot of clean and pressing on square bounds, but it would be interesting to see what this is a book that I bought because I thought it looked really good, had a potential to go into CGC. So this is out of all the books that I picked up during this particular week of auction wins, this is the book that I had considered going into CGC at some point. So anyway, guys, that's it. That's what I picked up. That's this week's comic book haul. Definitely leave me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know about the books I picked up this week. What do you think about them? And what do you think about working on a Defenders run? Is that something you would be interested in? Or even the All-Star Comics? You guys have got to let me know. Just leave me a comment below. And if you're ever interested in anything on the channel, definitely reach out to me at collectorauctions@yahoo.com or DM me on my Instagram account. You can also currently see what I have for sale by clicking the links below for eBay and on my Shortbox page. I've got things listed on both spots, so definitely check those out. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'm going to go get something to drink because my voice is going again. So take care, and I will see you for the next show. Just remember, every comic has a story.